Welcome to another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. I'm your host, Keandra Jones. This podcast educates, ignites inspiration, fosters encouragement, and paves the way for growth among small businesses and the overall Oak Cliff community. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dallas Zoo, Breakfast Brothers, Home Care Network, and ServPro. Thank you for your support. Now, let's jump into things. Today we're here with Gregory Scott Jr., who currently serves as the Senior Director of Total Rewards at a media and technology company that's focused on sports and entertainment based right here in the DFW area. Simultaneously, Gregory is also working on starting his own HR consulting firm that's focused on assisting small businesses and nonprofit organizations with their HR needs. Gregory brings more than 18 years of human resources experience in the areas of project management, talent acquisition, performance and talent management, labor and employee relations, and total rewards. Gregory earned his bachelor's degree in international business with a concentration in finance and a master's degree in human resources from Eastern Michigan University. Gregory also holds several professional certifications, including the Senior Professional in Human Resources, which is the SPHR, as well as all the other things. My God, Greg, God, dog. Greg has done everything as it relates to HR, which makes me so nervous because anybody that knows Keandra knows that I am not HR appropriate. But help me welcome Mr. Gregory Scott Jr. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Keandra, for having me. Appreciate it.
As I was reading through that, I got more and more nervous because I don't know what I'm going to say. Okay, so let's establish this first as I'm getting nervous here, that this is a judgment-free zone.
This is a judgment-free zone. I'm not going to have my HR hat on with you today. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So if I slip up and I say a bad word,
it's okay.
It's okay today.
So you saw the part where I said I had 18 years of experience in HR. It's not much I've seen. It takes a lot to shock me. So I'm sure you're not going to do anything that's going to shock me today.
Okay. Woo, Jesus. Okay. I'm reading all the HR certification, HR degree, HR advanced. Okay. All right. So as long as this is a judgment-free zone, welcome, my friend.
I appreciate it.
Okay. So we are going to start from the very, very beginning. So
okay.
I have known you for just a little bit of time.
Yes.
But I want to get to know you better today.
Okay. Perfect.
So outside of reading all the things that you've accomplished, who are you?
Who am I? So I'll probably describe myself as, this young, ambitious kid that was born and raised just outside the Detroit area, raised by my maternal grandparents. But I would say all of my grandparents had a hand in raising me. I come from the old school way of parenting. I had grandparents that didn't play. They held me to a very high standard of excellence. And, one of the things that my grandparents always taught me was, I would come home and they would say, I got a B. For most people, a B was good. My grandparents were, well, did anybody get an A? And it was, why didn't you get an A? And again, if there was justified reason for that, we talked about it, but they didn't accept mediocrity. And so that instilled in me to always put forth my best, put my best foot forward in any and everything, that I do. And I've just tried to apply that, that general principle, in every aspect of my life. And so I don't believe in half-stepping. I don't believe in, necessarily taking the easy way out of things. And, that has been, I would say paramount in, kind of just the things that I've been able to kind of accomplish just from, school, career, and, I subscribe philosophically. I try to treat people the way that I want to be treated. And so when it comes to, just even my personal relationships and my professional relationships, I strive to, apply that principle of always putting my best foot and my best self forward. So.
You know, Greg, we're around the same age. I'm a little older than you, but seemingly long gone are the days where parents and grandparents raise their kids
That
the
is
way
true.
that we were raised.
That's right.
How valuable is that kind of upbringing, do you think?
You know, Keandra, I think it's invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it speaks to just the integrity and to the values that are instilled in us. And you see that reflected, you know, just in the way that we move. And I say we because, you know, in this short time that I've known you, I see the way that you kind of navigate and the way that you kind of move. And I think it's important. I think it's been very important to shape who we are as humans. Now, flip side of that, and I'm gonna get a little. I'm not gonna say negative, but take it. I would also say that all of that upbringing is not all roses, rainbows, and unicorns. There's some trauma that comes with that, and I think you and I have talked about just the importance of mental health and those types of things. And I say, while it's great for the positive values of, hard work and, like I said, integrity and those things that it instills in us, some of those things that come with, a price. And it's come with, some of what, those generational curses that have been, handed down from generation to generation. And I always like to use the analogy of, when we're born, we're given a toolbox. And, everything that happens to us puts a tool in that toolbox. And what tends to happen sometimes is we get a favorite tool. So just like a handyman has a favorite tool, we get a favorite tool, and we try to apply that tool to every situation, which is not always the most appropriate. And that's why like I said before, I'm a huge proponent of mental, because I think mental health and therapy and those types of things teaches us how to use the other tools that are at our disposal. And also, as we think about, the next generations, like how do we break those generational curses? Because I think it's important to acknowledge those values, but I think it's also, sometimes us as a people, we subscribe to this, mentality that, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And I think sometimes we carry around all those things, and sometimes because it's instilled in us that to keep those things secretive. And I think we owe it to ourselves to be forthcoming and forthright, just like we share all of the positive things around our upbringing. How do we also share those traumas and start to work through them as well?
So this just became a whole nother show, Greg.
I didn't mean to take us there, but I didn't mean to take us there.
I love it. I love it. It's two different directions I want to go into now.
Okay.
Two different directions. Okay. Okay. Number one, we have, or maybe I should ask the question: do you think, from a workforce standpoint, this next generation is lacking something because there was something instilled in us so that mediocrity was not a thing for us? So how has that impacted the next generation?
It's funny that you mentioned that. So I don't know if everyone saw it, but there's an article that Forbes wrote that just came out maybe within the last couple of weeks, but I read it last week, earlier this week, and it talked about how leaders are literally firing people. Like, they've been out of college 2 months, and they're firing these college graduates. And as I was reading the article, it's interesting because the leaders were saying, some of the reasons is that they come in with this mediocrity, they come in with this lack of drive, they come in with this, this entitlement. And to your point, I think where it, right, wrong, or indifferent, not that I'm going to praise the trauma, but here's what I will say about it. That trauma built character in us. Facing adversity taught us that everything doesn't come easy. Some things you have to work for. Some things you have to be able to overcome. And I think sometimes the challenge with this next generation is us. What's funny is, I think we've laughed about this, at our age that we are now, we are in this very unique place where I got friends that have newborns, and I got friends that got grandkids. So, and we're all in the same generation. What's interesting is I think us, and again, I don't have children, but what I've seen of my friends that do have children is that I think in certain respects we may have swung the pendulum a little too far in the other direction, because I think because of the traumas and things that we've experienced and trying to break those generational curses, we wanted to shield this generation from some of the things that we've experienced.
Right.
The challenge I think with that is that we've kind of created this participation trophy generation that you show up and everybody's singing praise. Like, we haven't necessarily taught them how to overcome adversity that we had to overcome. Now, I say that to say that doesn't necessarily mean we got to take them through all those same traumas, but is there a constructive way that we can teach them? You don't have this sense of entitlement, but we subscribe to, like I said, that pendulum swing of not wanting them to subject them to things, and we've just kind of given them, everything. And again, I'm going to give a disclaimer. I'm speaking this as someone who is on the outside looking in, and someone who has had to as being in HR, had to hire this workforce and things like that. So this is in no way saying that I understand the challenges that come with parenting and things, because that's not been my experience. But I have been on the receiving end of that entitlement things from a workforce perspective.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. This workforce is very different.
It is.
And I can't quite put my finger on all of it. I don't know if it's COVID or if it's the way that this next generation is being parented. But I think that I can speak for most businesses, employers. It is difficult these days to hire good staff that know how to critically think. Because, and you touched on it quite a bit, there was a lot of trauma in how we were raised.
That's right.
And so I don't want to just sail past that, because, I mean, I'm paying a therapist weekly trying to overcome.
Bi-weekly. I'm with you. We together. Bi-weekly.
Trying to overcome some of that.
Yep.
And while I appreciate my work ethic, I appreciate that I'm going to critically think, I appreciate those things that we have in common.
Yep.
We're a part of the get it done generation.
We are the get it done generation.
Yep. By any means necessary. My heart bleeds for where we're going from a workforce standpoint.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I talk about just in general with the workforce is you mentioned my boss has a word. She loves to make up words, but she just figured it outness. And I don't know. That's sometimes where I see the struggle with this generation and the figure it outness.
Yeah.
Some of them have it, but a good majority of them don't. And I sometimes say, and, I'm going to break one of my own HR etiquette rules, but, sometimes I say as a leader of people, sometimes management is ghetto.
Listen.
And I mean that in tongue in cheek, but, sometimes it's, you have a mix of staff where, you got some staff that are really good at figuring things out, and you got some staff, what's funny is this has not just been my experience. I talked to several leaders, and we all have the same experience where, you got some staff, like I said, that they can go, you can give them A, and they can get the T all by themselves. Now, they may check in with you to be like, hey, did you want me to go A1 or A2? But they figure it out. And then you have some staff that, okay, here's A. Oh, so you don't know how to get to B. Okay, well, here's B. Okay, so you don't. And I'm just like, I'm gonna have to walk you from A to Z. And sometimes my challenge with the leader is, because I have this drive and work ethic. I'm like, sometimes as a leader, I'm like, move, I do it myself. Yeah. And I have to realize sometimes that I can't drive accountability as a leader. I can't drive, teaching you how to do it if I jump in and do it myself. Yes. And so I've had to learn even as a leader sometimes that, and I've learned this as my transition from, individual contributor to leader, is that sometimes the biggest part of leading is taking your hands off and allowing things sometimes to fail, because you have to teach those lessons in order to do that.
Greg, there's so many different directions. This really resonates with me because it's a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It is a huge struggle, and being the head of Oak Cliff or the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce, I hear it from our businesses,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not an answer that I can give
There's not.
because I don't know what the answer is or what the solution is. I can most certainly empathize, and I'm going through it, where you just have staff members that cannot think, and you're having to think for them.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time, to your point, by the time you do all that, it's just easier to do the thing.
Yeah.
You know, my predecessor, Bob Stimson, and I love him dearly. I remember when I had some staff when I was still working under him, and I had a team of folks that just, none of them were thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just getting in there doing it. And one day he came in, he said, "What are you doing?" And I told him what I was doing. He said, "Well, I'm about to go fire everybody else." He said, "Because if you're going to do your job and their job too, then I don't need them."
Why am I paying all this?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I paying all of this?
Yeah.
And so he said, either you teach them how to do their jobs, or you get rid of them and find people that can, or you're going to do your job and everybody's job.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that was helpful for me at that time, and I did end up having to just kind of wipe the slate clean and start over.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I didn't anticipate this conversation going that direction, but that hit home with me. But anyway, listen. Okay, so why HR? Why did you choose that career?
I don't know that I chose HR.
Okay. Did it choose you?
HR chose me. So let me tell you how this. Let me take you back to circa 2002, 2003.
Okay.
So I was in college at a time where this is Y2K. I was in college Y2K.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really telling my age. But I was also I was the second class to graduate post 9/11.
Okay.
And so if you think about where we were, so you think about the impact of 9/11, you think about the impact and downturn that had on our economy. Mm-hmm. We were in the thick of a recession when I graduated undergrad in 2003. And so I had went through this whole kind of, job after job and looking because as you heard in my bio, my undergraduate degree is in international finance. And so my actual career path that was in my head is I was going to go be somebody's financial analyst and somebody's eventually and I was eventually going to be a CFO. That was actually my plan. Mm-hmm. But, being a college graduate in the thick of a recession, it's kind of hard to do that and navigate because there were more of us that had flooded. And again, speaking of we came out of the generation of you go to college, you get a good job. That's what you do. Like, that's it.
That's right.
That's it. That's what you do. And so, you flooded, my class at the time when I came in as a freshman at Eastern, we were the largest freshman class in the history of the university.
Oh, wow.
So you think about all of us matriculate through and, we then graduate. And then it's like, there's like 5 of us and one job. Then what? Mm-hmm. So I, kind of graduated as well as we were getting prepared for graduation. I said, you know what, Greg? If you don't find a job by this date, go back to grad school. Mm-hmm. So that's what ended up happening. So I didn't find a job, so I go back to grad school. So go back to grad school, and I'm now pursuing an MBA. And I said, okay, well, I know I was going to stay in the business area. And I was like, well, finance is definitely out because clearly we saw how that shaped up from a undergraduate perspective. Mm-hmm. I didn't like accounting. I talked about earlier, I'm a left side brain. I'm a left brain. So marketing and the creative, that wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So then that left management. I was like, okay, so we'll look at management. So looked at management. Actually, what ended up happening is the first management graduate course I took was actually an HR class. And I was like, I kind of like this. And so I kind of took a couple more classes and, it was like really came to enjoy it. And so how my career got started is in the midst of, so my first year of grad school, my school is in the Metro Detroit area. So, of course, we have all of the big 3. So you have Ford, GM, Chrysler. So Chrysler comes to campus, and they're doing kind of on-site interviews for internships. And so The recruiter that came, got an interview set and met with him, and he's like, "Oh, Greg, at this point," he's like, "when you graduated." And at that point, I was still probably 18 months from graduation. And he said, "Well, you're too far from graduation at this point, but I'll be back. We'll be back next year. Definitely make sure you come interview for us again." So I said, "Okay." So that's what happened. So they came back. I interviewed. Thankfully, luckily for me, same recruiter came back. So it wasn't even really an interview. It was a conversation. He said, "Got it. I got a spot for you." Great. So ended up going through. So here's how they got me. They said to me, "Well, how do you feel about the Chicago area?" I was like, "Well, I like Chicago, not bad." So we're going to put me in the Chicago area. And I'm using air quotes because I fly in to go interview for the internship. And we go meet with the team that I'm going to go. So I fly into O'Hare. And when you say Chicago area, now O'Hare, if you're not familiar with Chicago, O'Hare is already on the outskirts of Chicago from a metro perspective. So I get in the car and I'm driving, and I was like, "Why am I still driving?" So I get to Rockford, Illinois. That's where they put me in an internship. And actually, I wasn't in Rockford. I was in this small town outside of Rockford, in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. But I wouldn't have traded the experience for anything in the world. I wouldn't have, because it kind of thrust me into HR. It was also the first time I'd ever lived away from home.
Okay.
And so it was a good experience. And so that kind of is what catapulted me into HR. So I came back, finished up grad school, ended up getting another internship. And then was in a fortunate space to end up having, had 2 offers on the table, and ended up going with Chrysler, and the rest is history. And so from there, graduated, and then I moved to the Cleveland area to work for Chrysler.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So how long have you been here?
So I've been in Dallas for a little over almost 12 years.
12 years.
So I moved to Cleveland. I was in Cleveland for 18 months. I moved to Minneapolis to work for a defense contractor. So I was there for 2.5 years. I moved then to Cincinnati to work for Ford. So I've worked for 2 out of the big 3. And then I moved back to Minneapolis for a year, did some consulting, and then an opportunity presented itself with the Boeing company. So I went to work for a subsidiary of them, and I stayed there. I was at Boeing for 8 years, and then I just moved to my current organization in 2021.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow. What a great career so far.
Yeah, I have no regrets. I've had an opportunity to live in a lot of different places and meet a lot of different people, and my experience has just been, I'm fortunate enough, which most people don't get. I've done everything in HR, which most people don't get the opportunity to do. Most people either start in one place and stay there, or they may move to like 1 or 2 different areas. But I've been fortunate enough to be able to do all the things, which has allowed me to figure out what I do like, don't like, and I've found my home in the total rewards area.
So, what is HR? It's just so scary. It's scary to people like me who, are potty mouth and all the things. What is it? What's HR?
At its core, HR is I would say, management of a company's greatest asset, which is its people. Mm-hmm. So it allows organizations to, and I don't mean manage in the sense of like lead people and things like that, but manage that as an asset. So just like you have finance that allows you to manage your, monetary assets, you have, product or production that allows you to manage, make things. So it's just another avenue, to manage assets that the company has.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've had a wonderful journey, wonderful career. You've worked all throughout every aspect of HR. Mm-hmm. How did you come to the realization that nonprofits like us and small businesses need what it is you do? How did you realize that?
I've had an opportunity to partner with a couple of different nonprofit organizations and small businesses, and I sit on the board for a nonprofit now, and so the idea really came sitting on that board, and the CEO of that nonprofit has been very much like, while I have you, let me ask you this question.
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
and it occurred to me, like, that nonprofit is fortunate because I sit on the board, so they have my expertise,
Right.
kind of available as
Right.
a resource. But it made me start thinking about, so are all nonprofits like this? And the CEO of that nonprofit said, Greg, this is a need. Like, in it made me start thinking about just other small businesses,
Right.
and I've had other friends and colleagues that have started businesses, and they're like, Greg, it's how do you and it just starts off as basic questions
Right.
with I want to go do this. How should I handle this?
Right.
And it just became for me just tapping into knowledge and just asking me questions. And as I started to get more and more of that, it really occurred to me that I'm like, this is a need, and it's not just a need, it's a niche need, because you have large consulting firms like Korn Ferry and Lockton's and Mercer's of the world that that do, because we use them in our world as an organization, and we use them for very certain things, like I have our broker now that we're using, because we're building a job structure, a job infrastructure, and so we're using them, leveraging them from that. But I realized that some companies, like small business and nonprofits, that's advanced. Right now, I just need basic. How do I hire people for my clients without breaking something? Am I, are we asking the right questions?
Right.
I have an employee relations issue. I have an employee that's not coming to work or not doing things. How do I handle that?
Right.
How do I, think about pay and those types of
Right.
things? And so I think realizing that for me, HR is intuitive. It's what I do.
Right.
But the more and more conversations that I have, and even to you, like today, you were like, "Am I breaking something by saying this?" And I'm like, "No, you're not." But I realize, like, HR. It's funny you say I'm scared, like I'm nervous. HR is not necessarily something to be feared. If you are actually doing what you're supposed to do, HR is there really to enhance, and support. But it's also, to your point, it's also a compliance arm as well, to make sure to, one, keep you out of litigation,
Right.
and in certain respects, keep you out of jail. That's the role of, that's really the role of HR, is to kind of provide that multifaceted support.
Yeah. For small environments like the one that I lead, I think the problem is we don't know what's right or what's wrong.
Right.
And so my only major experience when it comes to human resources was when I was in corporate.
Right.
And so, of course, I lean on that, but that's exactly right. In these spaces, we don't necessarily know right from wrong. So
Right.
there is a need, there's a gap.
Yep.
There have been so many times when I have needed those kinds of services in our organization. But the thing is, I don't know that I need it until I need it.
Right. Right. And it's also, you don't necessarily need it all the time.
Right.
And I think that's where, firms, like mine can come in, because you may have a need for this finite period of time. That's where you can step in and say, all right, let me help you solve this need, or address this issue, or build this project, or do whatever that looks like, and then move on. And
That's
then you
right.
come back and say, it may be 6 months, Greg, I'm doing something else. So that's what I realized, is that, for us, from our current organization, we're a 2,000 person organization, and we need HR all the time, because we always have things going on. A small business that may have 3, 4, 5, even maybe 10 people, they don't necessarily need HR all the time, because you're not necessarily turning people over like that.
That's
You're
right.
not necessarily like, once you set up your benefit infrastructure, once you set up kind of your pay scales and things like that, like, you don't change that stuff that often.
Right.
So, some of it is, like I said, a need from a setup perspective, but some of it is, the maintenance is not as necessary as it is for larger organizations, because you're not experiencing, not necessarily a lot of change from a people aspect like large organizations do.
Okay, so I know that you've been in this HR space for decades. Tell us one incident. I know you don't surprise easily, but one incident that surprised you.
I won't say surprised me. I would say set the tone for me. So,
Okay.
during my internship, I'll tell you, I'm in middle of nowhere, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
We had how Chrysler set up that plant was that plant used to make the neon. That's what that plant used to. They used to manufacture, assemble. It was assembly plant that used to make the neon.
Uh-huh.
So once they discontinued the neon, that facility actually became Chrysler's first flexible manufacturing facility.
Flexible, what is that?
Meaning that they can make, typically with assembly plants, like you can only make like one type of vehicle. With this allowed them to make different type of vehicles on the same line without a lot of, having to change out, machines and things like that. So it allowed them to manufacture different things. So it was kind of like first of a kind, because this is back in 2006. So this is like state of the art at that point. That's how it is now. Everybody does flexible. But anyways, so to rev up this plant, like they did local hiring and things like that, which I helped with, but they also wanted to incentivize people to come from other facilities, because then they didn't have to spend, with new people, that was a lot of, ramp up costs in terms of like learning and development and training and things like that. They didn't have to do that for people coming from other plants because they already had that expertise. And so they wanted to incentivize people to come to the plant. So later, I'm giving you this kind of out of where I found this out later, but they had ended up moving some employees from one of the plants in Metro Detroit. Now, two of the employees that they moved, I found out later, were problem children who were dating each other. So you already know how this goes. So they come to the plant. We get in. So I got there in May. We were doing rev up. So plant we go live. So the plant actually kicks off and starts running probably mid-July that I'm there. So I was on my labor relations, so I did a rotation within the plant. So I started in what we call personnel and employment. So I was out of the hiring side. Then I did safety, and then my last rotation was in labor relations because they were a unionized plant. Okay. So I'm on my labor rotation, and I was also doing shift rotation. Okay. So I had worked second shift. So second shift of that plant was 3 to 11. So I had just got off at like 11 o'clock. So I'm tired. I'm getting ready to lay down. So the third shift rep called and said, "Gregory, you should come back to the plant. We got an incident." I said, "Okay." So I come back. I'm doing the investigation. Here's what happens. Apparently, the female employee found out that the male employee was dating someone else in the plant. That didn't go over too well. Oh, gosh. Which is not, again, you have the right to be upset, but you should try to keep your personal life at home. Right. She didn't do that. Okay. She decided, because in retaliation, that she was going to try to run him over with her car. Oh, no. In the parking lots of the plants. Yeah, so we had to go and take all these witnesses. Now, mind you, I'm an intern, so I was like, "Oh, this is what HR is?" Sold. I'm in. I'm in. I'm in. Your reaction. I'm in. I was like, "Oh, this is," and even though that was probably, I would say, one of the wildest kind of investigations that I've done. I mean, I've had to, investigate. I'll never forget. We had another employee who, what was interesting is that I wouldn't say he's partial. He wasn't. He had difficulty seeing, so he had a magnifier on his screen. Okay. The problem is that he then decided that it was a good idea to look at inappropriate images on his screen in his cubicle, and so people were walking by and seeing it. So then I had to go get his laptop, and then I had to go research, and so then I'm seeing all the inappropriate sites he went to, and then I had to print it all out, all the pictures out, and then I had to show it. It was so that's why I say I've seen things that don't necessarily shock me anymore. I'm like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
So based on those stories, I don't feel so bad anymore.
Nope, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said it takes a lot to shock me.
Based on the stuff I say, that's nothing.
That's nothing. That's nothing.
So, okay, I do have a follow-up question about the girl that tried to run over the guy. Did she run him over?
She bumped him. She bumped him. She didn't do serious damage to him. She didn't run. She hit him, but it was in the parking lot, so she wasn't going fast enough to really do any bodily harm to him. She knocked him down. He got a few scrapes and bruises. The problem is not only did she get fired, but then there was criminal charges, and then she ended up going to jail. No. So it was a whole. So I was like, you did all this out of a crime and passion, and ruined your life essentially. So
Oh gosh, she
Yeah.
would have been better off hurting him.
She would that would
I
have made her
mean,
feel better.
I mean, the thing
If
is,
at that point,
if I'm in trouble, I may as well. Okay, well,
yeah,
that's maybe a non-HR
that's a nice
conversation.
job. Exactly.
We need
But
to have, but yeah, if I'm gonna do all that, if I'm getting in trouble, I'm gonna go ahead and do some
yeah,
damage.
yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents. Okay, but it's not about me. So, Greg, what is an incident? I'm almost scared to ask this question now that you've answered that one. Tell me who has been the hardest person, without a name, to fire. The incident.
Hardest person. I'll give you this. I won't say hardest. I will say this about terminations. I'm gonna give you mine from an HR perspective.
Okay.
I don't fire people. People fire themselves.
Amen. Yes.
So
yes, sir. Yes.
I would say in the number of terminations that I've done in my almost 20 years, I've only had one regrettable termination.
Really?
One. And this termination happened when I lived in Minneapolis, and I worked in the union environment. And this was an all-white, all-male union environment. There were no other diversity in there. And when I say all-white, I mean, and most of the employees in that union had been there for a minimum of 15 years. So we're not talking like 2-3 years, so we had one of the union guys. He was close to retirement. He was probably in his mid 60s, and he just wasn't cutting it anymore. And we worked in a prototype shop, and so it was because we're a defense contractor, we had prototypes and things like that. So it was very high clearance and things so I had to have security clearance and everything to even be in the facility. So, anyways, he wasn't cutting it, and the head of operations said he got to go, and I'm like, but you realize we got this union contract. You just can't it's typically always not hard to fire people, but you got to make sure your documentation and everything is in order. You have to make sure that you're following whatever rules, and depending on the laws of the state, you have to take all of these things in consideration. But on top of that, when you have a union contract, it's literally next to impossible to fire someone in a union. They have to do something so egregious because the union's going to file grievances and all this stuff to kind of keep them there. So anyways, I did the investigation. I didn't find anything. And so I went to we had a change in leadership at the time, which I didn't really particularly care for. And I didn't necessarily have a good rapport, even with my immediate manager. And so they came and was like, well, Greg, you're going to have to move. I was like, I'm not comfortable doing this termination because I haven't found anything justifiable to that. Not only that, this guy is retirement age. He could retire tomorrow. So if we fire him, he loses. And I think he was a 31, 32 year employee. And I'm like, if we fire him, then he loses all his pension, and he uses all he didn't lose his pension, but there were some very key retiree benefits that he loses because he got terminated versus retiring. And I was like, I'm not comfortable doing this. And so we went round and round, and they didn't necessarily threaten to say, if you don't do it, we're gonna fire you. But it was it got to a point, and I'll touch on it in a second about learning lessons in my career. It was Greg, you have to do this. And I was like, okay. So at this point, I wasn't necessarily, I didn't know enough at that time. I'm maybe, 5 years into my career. So, what I could stand on, what I could push back. I didn't know that at that time. And so, and I'm trying to grow and get ahead in my career. So anyways, I ended up going for it. So I sit this man down with this union rep, who was the union president, by the way, and tell them what's going on. Union president loses it, and I mean cursing at me and things like that. That part didn't bother me because I can handle the union reps. But Keandra, to sit across from this 60-something-year-old man who had been with this company for 30-some-odd years and see him start crying, I was there was nothing I really could say. So anyways, we go him out, they walk him out. Union president comes back and rants and raves some more, and I closed the door and I said, listen, I know you had to do all that. I said, let me go on. I said, I'm going to say this off the record to you. I did not agree with this at all, but I didn't have a choice. And union, even though him and I, the union president didn't have a necessary, he said, Greg, I appreciate you saying that. And so he said, I know what I need to do. So he went to war, ended up getting the guy back. And the guy ended up retiring, which was good. But it ended up souring kind of my viewpoint of my leaders, the organization, and I ended up, it completely demoralized my morale. Like I was like, this is not the place that I want to be. Right. So we ended up going through, and I ended up getting laid off. But in that instance, it was an instance of a career lesson for me that I now call it post 13 years later, and I'm like, oh no, I can put my foot out because you're not gonna fire me. Because if you fire me, let me tell you what's getting ready. Like right. I learned just about advocate. Like it's okay to advocate for myself and right. stand up for it. And some things, I've realized, even I apply this principle today. There's some things I'm going to, I use the analogy. Some things I'm gonna die on the sword for, and I'm gonna go to battle for. Mm-hmm. And other things I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do. Let me tell you the consequences, and you do with what you will. But I realized that one of the learning lessons I took from that is I would never allow myself to be put in a position where I'm asked to do something that goes against my integrity, and that's just something I would never question or allow to happen again.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
So, and I totally agree with you. Out of most of my terminations, they have terminated themselves. Mm-hmm. Most of them have. That's been the case. Now, you touched on a valuable couple lessons learned from that incident. Mm-hmm. What are some other key lessons that you've learned in your career that you'll take with you forever?
So one of the things that I'll give you what I call kind of my key principles. A lot of times people look at, their careers as a job. Mm-hmm. What you have to understand is your career is a relationship. Mm-hmm. And you have to treat that just like you treat any other relationship. Mm-hmm. For me, what I've learned is I have what I call non-negotiables when it comes to my career. Mm-hmm. But I also have my priorities. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, those priorities have shifted the older I've gotten and the higher I've gotten in my career. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. At one point, okay, now listen, let me preface to say, I don't go to work for free. I don't believe in working for free. You're gonna run my check on the 15th and the 30th.
Right,
mm-hmm.
right.
However, what I realize is money is not the number one priority for me.
Okay.
When it comes to work or it comes to my career. Mm-hmm. I've listed out, and I have a list of what my intangibles are and what things I have to have in order for me to be consider a role and consider someplace I want to be. Mm-hmm. Money is like 3 or 4 on the list for me. Mm-hmm. And I've even, recently, like, because at this point in my career and some of the things, like, I've been offered, some very significant roles that I've turned down. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, my best friend said, we could have made that work for a period of time. I said, it's not about that. I said, I'm not going to go somewhere, I don't care how much you pay me, and be miserable.
That's right.
And have to go spend, even though COVID has changed the work environment and things like that, but I'm not going to go spend, whether it's virtually in the office or whatever, 5 days a week somewhere where I'm miserable. I'm not doing that.
Right.
And here are the things that make me miserable. Here are the things that I need to not be miserable. Mm-hmm. And so I say, from a principle, things that I've learned I take with me in my career is that understand what's important to you when it comes to your career. Mm-hmm. Understand what's important to you when it comes to a role. And once you understand those things, it will help you shape and navigate how you move in your career. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have those principles, just like in a relationship, if you don't understand what things are important to you in a relationship, what you then end up doing is jumping from relationship to relationship because you're chasing these things or chasing these ideals or these desires without really understanding what they are. Mm-hmm. Same thing with a job. Mm-hmm. If you don't understand what's important to you from a career perspective, and then you end up jumping from job to job. This person, this job is giving me $5 more, so I'm gonna go over here, and now you're 10 times more miserable for $5. Is that really what you wanted to do? So those are some of the things I've learned. I would say probably the most critical things I've learned in my career, because some of my moves have been, my move to Cincinnati was it was a panic and a money move, and I was miserable that entire year, and I said I would never do that again. Mm-hmm. So,
Greg, those are wisdom tidbits.
Yes,
wisdom that you can tell based on the way that you're using your words. These are experiences. Didn't nobody tell you.
No. This is what I lived.
This is what you lived.
Yep.
And there's always a difference in those lessons versus something that you've read in a book or seen somebody else go through.
Absolutely.
One thing about life, when you get those lessons through life, those experiences, they stick with you.
They stick with you.
They tend to stick with you. So we know that you've been in this space for a long time, and now that you recognize that people like me, we need you
Yep.
to help us. No, we're not hitting people with cars.
Right.
Today.
Today.
But there's always opportunity tomorrow
Correct.
for,
Correct.
some
Correct.
adventures.
Yes.
And so how quickly are you going to be available to us?
So it's funny that you asked that, Keandra.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've realized, and hopefully this part of my story, hopefully inspires someone. This vision and this dream of kind of this consulting firm has been in my spirit and on my heart probably, I would say, for the last 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
But I'm set on it. Because, and you probably can assess this, when you get to a certain point in your career and you get accustomed to a certain lifestyle,
Yes, sir.
and you get accustomed to, your check consistently hitting on whether you bi-weekly, monthly, semi-monthly, whatever your cadence is,
Right.
you get accustomed to that check going into your account.
That's right.
During that cadence.
Right.
And, this, idea of stepping out on your own and, kind of doing your own thing, and, you become responsible for, you kill what you eat. I mean, you eat what you kill, excuse me.
Right.
Versus it being provided to you, that constitutes a real fear. And so I've sat on this, kind of out of fear. But like I was sharing with you earlier, one of the things for me that has come to fruition is I'm like, what I've learned about corporate America is that corporate America cares about you as long as you're useful to them. Once you're no longer useful, they don't care about you anymore. And I recognize that now, that I can't have my fate in other people's hands.
Amen.
But I also, more importantly, realize that one of the things that God said to me as it relates to this is, you're not just sitting on your destiny with this. There are other people's destinies tied to you doing this, and you're sitting on theirs too. And I was like, well, just get me together, why don't you?
Right.
So I give that, as a testimony to say, for me, like this is ground running. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so, my goal is to, get this infrastructure and everything, ready to go. I would say by the end of 24, and we can hit the ground running. And I said by, and what I mean by, I'm like, if I can get some, get everything set up and everything ready to go, I would love to have this ready to go in the next 60 days.
Well, we need you.
Yes.
It's a lot of us that need, and I'm sure that folks that are listening and watching, they'll let you know they need you. We need you.
Right, sure.
And again, I go back to, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
Until there's an incident. And I've found myself
Yep.
in some pickles
Yep.
and just not knowing which way to turn.
Yep.
So just know that you're needed quickly.
Yep.
And so we'll have to do a follow-up after you've launched so people know how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
And all the things.
Absolutely.
I'm going to transition a little bit to another thing.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
We got sidetracked because you took me back a little while ago when we were talking about the trauma and all the things.
Yep.
And so I got sidetracked. I want to know, what do you, Greg, do as a hobby or hobbies?
Hobbies.
What are some of your hobbies?
What's interesting, if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I'd say, the streets, be in the streets, I'm outside all the time. Now I'm like, so couch, homebody. I'm a homebody.
Really?
I have my moments where I'm like, let's go out, let's have a good time. But for the most part, like I'm good for a house kickback. Like come over to the house, like let's do a game night. Let's do, those are my things. I love to cook. I love to entertain. So it's hosting and those types of things. I would say one of my other, hobbies, travel. I love to travel. I counted this year. I was talking to my dad the other day, and we were talking about something. And he's like, "When you coming home?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm not coming home till Christmas." So I was like, "I need a break from traveling." He's like, "You have been traveling?" I said, "I counted. I've been on a plane 25 times this year already."
And it's October.
It's October.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But I love to travel, and I'm always for new experiences and things like that. A new hobby that's coming that I didn't think I would start to enjoy. You'll appreciate this because you know who my partner is. Karaoke is becoming.
See, I couldn't wait for you to say
I
that.
knew, I was gonna say karaoke. It's become a thing, and I really enjoy it. I think that's become and I realize how it brings people together, and that I really love that. So outside of that, those are my main things, and spending time, with friends, being down here. I don't have any family down here, so my friends have become, my family, and I think, outside of that, launching this business has become, not a hobby, but, something that I really want to focus on in my free time. And then, like I said, just continue to grow and to get involved. One of my, I have a friend and a fraternity brother that's like, we need you involved in the chapter. I was like, I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And so I'm like, I don't know about that. We'll see. I was like, we got some things to prioritize, but, just, and it's so funny, just kind of sitting here listening, to today, I'm like, I see the need and I see the opportunity to get involved, and I want to, figure out what that means, figure out what that niche and figure out what that means for me. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I got to go back, take you back to karaoke because that's my
yes,
thing.
I know.
I love it. What's your go-to song?
So, as a child of the 90s,
Yes.
My friends will tell you I got banned from doing it because I did it every time we did karaoke.
Okay.
So Faith Evans, as soon as I get home, is always that is always my karaoke song.
I love it.
So I'm banned from doing that song now. Sorry, I can't do that now. But you can always what you can't ban me from is you can always guarantee that from a karaoke perspective, I'm always gonna give you a song from the 90s. Always.
I love it. I've seen you perform. I love it.
Yes, you always gonna get a 90s R&B song out of me. So
I totally love it. Okay, now you also mentioned your partner, which is State Rep Vinton Jones.
Yes.
This is, I believe, his sophomore term.
That is correct.
What has the experience been like being partnered with a state representative?
It has been an experience. I probably have learned more about Texas politics than I probably ever wanted to.
Okay.
But that's not a bad thing. I have come to appreciate the infrastructure. Let me say it this way. I've come to appreciate the efforts, and I've come to it's put a lot of things in perspective as it relates to the infrastructure of our government, and it has become even more apparent, just even in our current political environment, how important education and knowledge are. And I'm going to give my plug of why it's so important for us to get out and vote.
Yes.
And for those that don't know, and I believe when you can always go to votetexas.gov. To verify. I believe the deadline to register to vote is either today. I think it's today, actually. It's either today or Monday.
Okay.
So if you have not, check your voter registration status. I'm sure you all have seen the reports of the purging of the rolls and things like that. We don't know what that impact looks like. So definitely get out, and I'm definitely make sure that you register to vote and get out to vote. And I would say probably the biggest takeaway I've had from being partnered with someone in the political space is I think a lot of us as a people kind of subscribe to this. I'm not going to say us as just black people, this is people in general, that our vote doesn't matter. And that's such a huge misconception of not understanding the impact that we have as voters. And I think it's important for us to recognize that we have the power.
That's right.
To change and to turn what this looks like. And I think, one of the things that I've shared with Vinton sometimes, we've talked, and he's like, he's expressed frustration sometimes around, why don't people get out and do and vote? And I said, you have to understand, like, you live and breathe this every day. I said,
Mm-hmm.
most people don't.
Right.
And I said, what has helped me connect the dots is people don't understand either what's in it for them
Mm-hmm.
or how it applies to them.
Right.
And my biggest takeaway, from being in such close proximity with someone in this space is I've seen firsthand the impact that these decisions have on me.
Right.
And being able to connect those dots of how it impacts me has motivated me to be, oh no, this is what we gotta get out and do. And I think, if anything else, I would want people to take away that, yes, don't get me wrong, presidential elections and, Congress elections and those things are important, but your local elections
right.
are the most important because that is where it has the most impact.
That's right.
On you.
That's right.
So, yeah.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate you saying that. We've talked about quite a few things, from parenting to voting to HR to your hobbies. I'm going to go back real quick to hobbies because I realized you missed one of your hobbies.
Did I?
Yes.
What did I miss?
You missed one, a big one. You're a kick-ass spades player. And I just remember that.
I am. I forgot about that.
You are.
Yeah.
And I think all that HR stuff goes out the window when you're busy working, the spades table. I don't know what you said that triggered that. Yeah. But you do.
Spades. Well, I tell people spades is a strategy, and I have to say, shout out to Gregory Sr., my father. That's where I learned that from.
Yeah.
So, but spades is a strategy. You just gotta learn how to do it.
Yeah, I remember you kicked my ass.
I did. I did. I did. I did.
And did.
I did. And did.
And did.
And did.
You
and
sure did.
But I love a good spades game.
Yeah.
I'm also starting to realize I love a good Uno game too. So.
Okay. Well, I hadn't played Uno in a long time.
Oh, they got new Uno games now. So this No Mercy game it changed the tide. Like basically they took all the I almost said something to catch my. I almost did say something very un-HR like. They took all of our non-traditional rules and basically incorporated them into the game. So you remember how you couldn't we stack cards, we revert all of that. All those rules are incorporated into the game now.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to have a game night. Yep. HR, you can't be present. HR, Mr. We need to have a game
HR
night.
Greg is not present. I tell people I take my HR hat off.
He ain't welcome here. Now he's welcome. He welcome at the chamber. But it sounds like we need to have a good old-fashioned game night with karaoke.
Karaoke. Almost similar to what we did for my birthday.
Now listen, your birthday was amazing. You are the only person that I've seen have a planned, with an itinerary weekend.
So I can take no credit for that. Shout out to Mr. Vinton Jones for pulling that together. He definitely stepped up to his partner duties and executed an amazing. I would say in my top 3 of birthdays.
Now listen, y'all did that.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Y'all did that. That was an amazing celebration, and I was happy to be a part of it all.
Yeah, he did that, and again, I appreciate because. Take this back. Sometimes I'm all about, giving people their flowers while you can. Yeah. And sometimes as a person who's naturally a giver, you don't always see yourself getting your flowers. Right. And so that was a weekend where I was overwhelmed by the flowers that I got. And, the fact for him to even, take that time and effort, and he loves a good itinerary, and I appreciate it. To do that, it meant the world, and so so shout out to my baby Vinton Jones for that. I appreciate it.
He's such a I met Vinton probably maybe a year and a half ago now, and there was just an immediate connection, and in fact I thought we were going to be at odds. I did.
Interesting.
I thought we were going to be at odds because there was a misstep on our organization's part, and so but when I met him, it was just something about him, and I like people mostly, but
Yeah.
I loved him.
Yep.
And then when I met you, I was like, y'all are just so awesome.
It's the energy, and you can tell a lot. And I realize at this age, and it's funny that you mentioned that. Like, life is too short to waste time on, people and things that, don't bring you good energy or bring positivity to
That's
you.
right.
And so I appreciate you. Even in the short time we know each other, just the energy that you bring is so phenomenal. And I just want to say I appreciate you and all that you do, because, looking at, this platform and all the things that you do with the chamber and the opportunity and things like that. So I'm greatly appreciative. So thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I do.
But I mean, but to your point though, it's the energy that people bring. And, one thing that my grandmother used to always say is, she's like, when you meet people, they're going to always show you who they are. They may fake it for a minute, but she said, and my godmother used to say, she said, a zebra never changes their stripes.
That's exactly right.
So.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, I apologize for being so all over the place with our conversation.
This is a great conversation, though.
Thank you.
This is an amazing conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for being here today.
Yes.
Getting to know you so much better.
Yes.
Reminding you that you kicked my ass in spades.
I'll give you a rematch. I'll give you a rematch.
Please.
We will set it up soon. Get a
Please. Give me another chance. Because normally I beat asses. I don't take them. I don't take whoopings well.
Yeah. I see Miss Competitive.
Listen, I do not take them well. I do not. But I appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do.
Yep.
Thank you you're about to be our HR savior. You know that.
Oh, it's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot.
That's
because,
a lot of pressure.
baby, we do a lot wrong. Now, we don't use our vehicles, but we do a lot wrong. So we're looking forward.
And you know what? I won't even say it's wrong. It's just, that's not the best. It may not be the best way. It's not completely wrong, but it's like there's always a better way to do it. So,
yeah. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you for dropping by.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You'll have to come back as soon as we're up and going. You'll have to come back, and we have to tell people how to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm your host, Keandra Jones. And again, thank you for watching another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. We'll see you next time.